Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session on SQL. I've made this on a course that I'm teaching at an MBA college out here. And this is how the module looks. The basics of database and SQL operations, and introduction to SQL, concept of ER designs, type of keys, asset properties, transaction operations, database creation, SQL commands, the different constraints, etc. So let's get started. This particular video is predominantly a theory video just to get you started, get the basics on. And after this, we'll do everything that we are covering over here through code also. Now, of course, Oracle SQL is the best known one, and we can definitely go and download it onto our computer system or work on it online. However, my personal preference is one compiler because one compiler has multiple types of SQL. So, yes, don't get worried. I'll introduce you to what I'm trying to tell you. So SQL per se is the structured query language. I think all of us understand this. And it is the standard language for managing and manipulating databases. It is used for querying, updating, and managing relational databases. And SQL ensures structured and organized storage of data, making it easier to retrieve and manage. So all of this sounds really nice. What does it really mean? Let's take a look. Okay. First thing we need to understand is why data. So the backbone of any business is data, and I think all of us understand it, but how really does this work? So the fact is that for a business to thrive, you need to ensure that the business, sorry, the business needs to give the same product or service experience to the customer over and over again. So when you walk into McDonald's, you don't want a very large burger, you don't want a very small burger, you want a burger which looks like the McDonald's burger. That's the size you're mentally thinking of, right? When you go to buy a Nike shoe, you don't need the size 8 to be very large or very small. It needs to be the standard size 8 that you are used to. So on and so forth, you will realize that whenever you're looking at a business, you go there because you can get um, the same product or service over and over again. Okay, that's what is standardized outcomes, consistent products and services is what we need from a business. Now, how does the business ensure you get this? The business ensures you get this by looking at some processes and policies, right? It creates some processes to ensure the manufacturing and sizing, etc., is exactly the same, and it ensures some service policies to ensure that you will get exactly the same outcome every time. Now, obviously, a business is very complicated. It has multiple parts. So, it of course has sales and marketing, which is different from, manufacturing, which is different from supply chain, and then it has a financial management department. So, there is just so many parts of a business. And how does everything? How do you know that the business is working fine? Is it adhering to the processes and policies we've spoken about? We understand that with the help of data systems called ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning Systems. They've been along and around for a long part, and this is a process used by companies to manage and integrate important parts of their businesses through software to connect the planning, purchasing, inventory, sales, marketing, finance, human resource departments all together. So you need these centralized systems to ensure that all of the different departments of a business are working fine. The output of ERP systems is what? It is data. And we know that the mountain of data is ever increasing. So data is growing every second because there are so many people who are creating data in a business. It is your employees, your customers, devices, all of them are creating data for the business. Business time frames are reducing. So everyone wants faster economic downturns. Sorry, I don't mean they want an economic downturn. But what I mean to say is that business timeframes are reducing, which means there are faster economic downturns, faster banking. So earlier, for an outstation check to get cleared could take up to 7 days, but today you have it in real time. Faster customer service, Swiggy, Zomato, the rise of quick commerce, self-service over delayed service. So you have Ease My Trip and Make My Trip and so many such e-commerce, Myntra, Amazon, device-driven systems which help us work faster and smarter in our life, right? So to facilitate our life, we have so many systems, and the business to facilitate its improvement goes through a cycle. What is the cycle? It needs to identify who is its customer, what are the services that they take from them, when do they need the services, what is the money that is made, and then there should be a feedback loop to improve these services and goods that they create. Okay. All the data which is going through the ERP systems, all of this lead to database decisions and recommendations. And we've seen the cycle of database decisions and recommendations, right? What are the things that businesses really want? They want to know who buys my product, what is it that they buy, in what size, at what value, when do they buy it, what is the money I make on each item that I sell, and then what is the feedback so that it can move into a loop of continuous improvement. Right? So from here, therefore, we understand that the data from ERP systems move to our various data science and analytics models from and use statistics, which use statistics to summarize and create uh, you know, predictive and prescriptive learnings using SaaS, software as a service. These SaaS products include things like Power BI, Python, R, etc. So I think this gives you a very clear idea how exactly the whole data system, the data processes move in an organization. Now, as I was mentioning to you, the ERP supports all levels of organizations. So the lowest level is, of course, the operational level, where you want to be able to manage your purchasing, warehousing, manufacturing, sales, distribution, customer service, right? If you were to look at HR and human resources, you are looking at a process called hiring. Then you want to know how many resumes came in for which job description, and who gets shortlisted for an interview, and so on and so forth. So these are very operational decisions, and these are the lowest level of decisions. Then you have the middle management in an organization, which makes tactical decisions. So what to do in a 1 month or a 3 month time frame, right? So they see MIS every month and try to see that is it better or worse than last month? Is it similar to the values of last year, same time, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, you have top level management who look at the strategy for the business. They decide what is the path of the business, and they think in long terms. They think in 1 year, 3 years, 5 year plannings, etc. Now, this data has to support information for all these levels. Hence, you have the analytics, data science departments, which ensure that all these requirements can be created out of the same data, because the data is the same, right? It is the same data which is going to the ERP systems. So what we see is that ERP system generates the data, and we would want to understand where and how is this data stored. So this data that is generated by the ERP systems is stored in what is called a database. The database is a collection of tables. Okay. And each of the tables has fields or columns. Okay. In SQL, these columns are called attributes, and each row is a record. Okay. Each row of data. So for every customer, for any transaction, you will have one row of data which gets added into a table, which is part of a database, and the database is linked to an ERP system. I hope this is clear. Okay. One of the largest and the most used databases today is the Oracle database. And if you were to look at Oracle databases, also the structure is exactly the same. The tables exist in a database. The tables are the basic unit of data storage, and data is organized in rows and columns within every table. The rows and the columns, each row is a collection of columns for one entity. So transaction ID, customer ID, right? So, a student. So you have one row of data which gets added for that student into the college database, and the information corresponds to a single record. Each row represents a unique record in the table. Integrity constraints. This is something which I would want you to focus on, because you can specify rules for each column of a table. These rules are called integrity constraints, and they ensure data accuracy and consistency. For example, no two people in a college can have the same roll number, right, in a particular class. Okay, so if there is a class, it will have a unique set of roll numbers which is assigned to each student of that class. So when we look at types of databases, because yes, of course, this is not the only type of database out there in the market, you will realize that actually there are three big sets of databases you can find. You find the relational SQL databases, which are the traditional databases with the row and the column structures. You find time series databases. So, with the advent of IoT and scanners and sensors, there is continuous data getting generated, every 30 seconds, every 1 minute. And the unique value in these data is often the timestamp, the hour, minute, second, millisecond, okay, that the data was picked up. So this is a big set of data currently in the market. And then you have the NoSQL database, which is data where you don't need to have a relationship between all the tables. It is more like an unstructured set of data. Often a lot of visual, video, audio data would be in like this. Now let's understand, therefore, that which type of database is most important, sorry. And when we were to look at this, this is what we can see. That, when we look at databases, relational SQL databases, the type that we are talking about, approximately out of business data, 70 to 80% of the data is of this format. Okay, there is structured schema with tables and fixed columns. There is ACID compliance, which ensures transactional integrity. You can use SQL for data manipulation, and there's strong consistency. There is not too much chance of making a mistake. Okay, it's nearly nil chance of making a mistake. Then, of course, you have time series data, which is optimized for time-stamped information. As I mentioned to you, a lot of the monitoring, IoT, sensor data, network performance data, stock market data, these are come from this type of time series data. And this is approximately 5 to 10% of all the data that we have. And when you look at the NoSQL data, this flexible schema, unstructured, semi-structured data, which a lot of social media, content management, web application uses, is approximately 15 to 20%. So even today, if you want to work in the space of data, you need to be very good with relational SQL databases. So this is a big case for why you should know SQL. Now on the screen in front of you is the fact that SQL is it's an old language, right? So people have created versions of SQL keeping the basic structure pretty similar. Okay, so today in 2024, when they did a survey to check that which version of SQL or which version, or should I say, um, which type of SQL is most used today, we find that PostgreSQL SQL has the largest followers. MySQL is next. SQLite is then we see SQLite, we see MongoDB, Microsoft SQL Server, so on and so forth. So Microsoft SQL Server, as you would have figured out, is the SQL version which Microsoft uses. Okay, so how will I understand the tables in a database becomes one of the most important questions that you would therefore want to answer, right? Because where's the data? It's in tables. Where's the table? Table is in database. So how do I understand the tables in a database? So let's look at it. in front of you is a set of structures. It is like a map about the tables. There's a database which has students and the courses they've taken and the grades that they've got. So before you start making a database and the tables, what you want to do is you want to put down the processes and policies of the business, okay, into some sort of structure, so that the computer engineer who doesn't understand the business can understand how the business data should be put out. So you will know most tech people have never learned about business processes or business policies. They only learn about technology. But people who are from the analytics, data science side, they understand, and they should understand both parts, so that they can help even understand what type of structure will help the tech guys to get you the best possible type of data for the analytics, data science, tactical, strategic, and operational reports and analytics. So here you go. There is this type of a diagram which you can create, which says that, all of these are linked to each other with the help of a key. So the student, which courses they have taken, is linked to the student database through a student ID key. Okay. You could have, if you're in college, you would have an admission ID, which is a unique number for you. How do you know the course to the student? You know it through a course ID. With the list of courses is stored in a different data table, which is called courses. Okay. How would you know the grade that the student got for each of the courses he or she has taken? You will know it through a grade. Here I could have called it grade ID also, but here it's just that field is called grade, which is a text field, which is a primary key in the grades table. Okay. So this type of a structure is created, a map, so that you can create a grade database. What is this map called? This map is called an entity relationship diagram. So different entities, like here, the student, the course, the grades are linked to each other, right? And this ER diagram visually represents data relationships. So what are the components? If you can go back, there are entities like the students and courses. They are attributes like student name and the course ID, and then there are relationships. Okay, so here you go. Here you can see there are students there, which has attributes called student first name, student last name, course, which has got an attribute called course ID, course name, etc. Right? So you have this type of a matrix that you build so that you can actually understand the flow of the data. Also, if you're gone to a company which is already existing, where they are very set processes, ERP systems, etc., all large companies would have the entity relationship diagrams for the data in the ERP systems. So you don't have to beat around or be dependent. You can just request for the ER diagrams for the ERP, and you can get on. Okay. So when you look at the ER model, there are three components: the entity, the attribute, and the relationship. What is the entity? It is the item for which the table has been created. Here, the students or the courses. There can be two types of entities. There are strong entities and weak entities. What are strong entities? They are the entities which can exist independent, like the course. Course will exist independent to a student, right? Or the grade they get. And student can exist independent, right? To a course or to the grades they get. But a grade will only exist for a student and for a course. Okay. So the grade is a weak entity, while the student and the courses are strong entities. Attributes, usually the columns in the data table. You have different types of attributes: key attributes, composite attributes, multi-valued attributes, and derived attributes. We'll see it, but basically understand that these are the columns or the items for which you get data for the entity. Like, for example, for the student entity, you have a student name, a student contact, a student email ID, right? These are attributes about the student. Then we have relationships between the different entities, which can be of four kinds predominantly: one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, and many-to-many. Now, these also we will cover, but basically it means that, like a student, they can be one student can take many courses, right? And one course can take many students. Okay, so this is a many to many relationship, and we'll see it further. So just do not worry, don't get confused. I'm just introducing the concepts to you here. Now here, therefore, when we saying we are making an ER diagram, so we understand, right? We don't have to do it in writing. We don't have to write in language. So what do? You do entity, which is by a single rectangle box, two rectangle boxes, one below the other is a weak entity, a relationship, which is a rhombus. The two together make a weak relationship, an attribute, which is an oval, two together make a multi-valued attribute. Cardinality, like one to many, many to one, it is easy to understand. Here you can see 0 or 1, many to 1. So one from one point it starts, goes into many fingers, right? One and only one, double ones. Okay, so just see this. You can keep this handy for yourself. So strong entity versus weak entity in a database design is that we've already seen a strong entity is an entity that can exist independent of other entities. All entities you will find have a unique identifier. And this unique identifier is called a primary key. Like I mentioned, your student ID. Now, what is the characteristic? The strong entity has a primary key that uniquely identifies each record. It does not rely on other entities for its identification, and it can exist without depending on any other entities. Okay. While a weak entity, by definition, cannot exist without being associated with a strong entity. It relies on a foreign key from a strong entity for its identification. So the grade relies on the student key and the course key for its identification. Okay. Then if you look at the characteristics, it lacks a sufficient primary key on its own, depends on a strong entity for existence, has a partial key that uniquely identifies it within the context of the strong entity. Okay, so here is the example also that we were talking about. A student ID in the enrollment table is a foreign key that links the enrollment to the student. Okay, enrollment ID is a partial key because when it combines with course ID, it forms the composite key for enrollment. Now you might say, why? I don't want to do it like this. See here, the requirement is given by the college because who is the customer finally? What is the business owner? It's the college. Okay, so that's why ER diagrams and tech systems are made to ensure that the processes and policies of the company are well represented in technology. Okay, so let's start here with the types of attributes. Attributes are what? They are the columns, right? They are the items about the entity that we will take data for. So simple attribute that cannot be divided into smaller parts. Okay, like student ID, name, age in a student entity, you can't divide it to smaller parts. Okay, what is derived attributes, which can be derived from other attributes, like your age can be derived from the date of birth. Okay. Now, these derived attributes often are not stored in the database, but they are computed as needed because, like age, if you were to look at it after 1 year, the age would have changed, right? Composite attributes, these are divided into smaller subparts and they help represent complex attributes. Like a full name can be divided into first name and last name. Address can be taken from street, city, state, zip code, right? When you have seen it, you go to Myntra.com or any online site, and if you put in your address, they actually give you separate boxes for each of these items. Multi-valued attributes that can have more than one value for a single entity, like phone number. The student can have two phone numbers. Okay, like courses. Some student can decide, I'm going to take two courses. I'm going to work extra hard and I'll be able to do two courses. Now we come to the third aspect of entity attributes, which is the relationships. Okay, so in a ER diagram, we need to define the relationships between the entities. Okay, like one-to-one. A one-to-one occurs when one entity is exactly associated with one set of data, like the student and the student ID. Each student has exactly one student ID card, right? Like you have exactly one PAN card. One to many. This relationship occurs when one entity of the first set can be associated with multiple entities of the second set. Like a student can enroll in multiple courses, but each course is linked, course enrollment ID is linked only to one student. Okay. So, again, as I mentioned to you, these relationships are defined on the basis of the processes and policies of the business. Many to many. Okay, many to many relationship occurs when multiple entities from the first set can be associated with multiple entities for the second set. Like the student and the course, students can enroll in multiple courses and each course can have multiple students. Many to one entity. Here, it is the reverse of the one to many. From the table on the left side, you're saying many entities from one set can be associated with a single entity of another set, like the student and the department. Many students can belong to one department, but each student belongs only to one department, right? So if you're an MBA course student, you will only belong to MBA department. Again, please note that the ER diagram can vary for different organizations because their processes and policies may differ. Now, here we're talking about an ER diagram of a bank which has the following description. The bank can have customers. It is identified by name, code, address of main office. Banks have branches. Branches are identified by branch number, branch name, address. Customers are identified by name, customer ID, phone number, address. Customers can have more than one account. Okay. Accounts are identified by account number, account type, and balance. Customers can avail loans. Loans are identified by loan ID, loan type, and amount. Account and loans are related to a bank's branch. Okay. See here, it is as per the policies and processes of this particular bank. Now, you have certain banks which say that no, you can be a customer without being an online customer only. That means without having any branch related to you. You can have that as a policy, then this sequence would differ. Okay. So the bank has branches. The one bank has many branches. Branch maintains accounts. So one branch has many accounts. Branch offers loan. One branch can offer many loans. Account is held by a customer. Many accounts can be held by many customers, right? Okay. Because, you have joint account holders also, right? That's why. Loan is availed by a customer. So many customers can avail of many loans because, again, joint account holding. Okay. So when you look at it, the ER diagram looks something like this. There's a bank which has a name, it has a code and an address, and then it has branches. There can be many branches. Each branch has branch ID, name, and address, but every branch can have two relationships, that it offers loans and it can maintain and create accounts. Accounts are like saving account, current account, etc. Okay. So on and so forth. So this sequence of things is called an ER diagram. Okay. So the first thing to do is always to put together the entities, then put their attributes, and then link them through relationship. Now we come to the part that you must be very keen to explore, which is your structured query language part. So when you look at SQL, and for the purpose of this course, we are looking at three main things that SQL can help you do. What are the things? DDL, which is defining and modifying objects in the database. Okay. So this focus on the structure of the database. DML, which is data manipulation. Okay. This focuses on commands which help you to retrieve, insert, update, delete data. Okay. DCL, database control. structures which help you to access and provide security and permissions to different users to reach the database. Okay, so when you look at the commands, and I've numbered them out in 1, 2, and 3, because TCL, which is transaction control commands, those we are not covering just now. Okay, so when you look at defining the database definition language, what are you looking at? You are looking at creating a database, creating a table, altering it, changing the columns, dropping the columns, truncating it, dividing it, removing some data, renaming some columns, right? So all these come under definition of the table and the database. Rather the table more, and database, of course, has to be created only once, which is because database is nothing but a compilation of multiple tables. Then when you look at database manipulation language parts, you're looking at being able to select and extract information from the database and tables, insert information there, data there, update it, delete it, merge across different tables. So there are these 5 commands over here. And then when you're looking at control, database control, you're looking at granting access and revoking access to different people. See, transaction control is different, and it is mostly used only by the tech team to ensure the commit, rollback, and saving of transactions in the database. Okay, so mostly what you find is that analytics and data science people don't need this don't need to learn this part. Okay, so there is something called, when you're on the topic of transactions, let's talk about ACID properties in database management. Okay, that whenever you try to insert data, right, you try to create a transaction, there are certain things that should happen. The first is atomicity. That is, the entire transaction, entire row of information should be created at one point, or it should not be created at all. Consistency, that after the creation and before the creation of that row of data, the database characteristics should be exactly the same. Isolation, that means multiple transactions should be able to be inserted into the table at the same time and into different tables in a database at the same time without interfering with each other. Durability, that means the changes of a successful transaction occurs even if the system failure occurs. That means that it would have got saved right into the database, into the table. So these are the ACID properties of the database management system to ensure that there is good storage and good monitoring of the data in a database. Okay, so when you look at ERP systems, these utilize relational database mostly. So you have centralized data management, which is possible because each of the tables, across the organization, right from the supply chain to the manufacturing to the sales, they are linked to each other through some relationships. Data relationships and integration of data happens, and there is efficient reporting and analysis. You can't get lost. No piece of data can get lost. All that can happen is that the user may not have put in the data. Okay, that is possible. There can be no value of data, but it is not that system cannot trace that particular data attribute of that data. Okay, so when you look at ERP systems out there, you will notice that there are different ERP softwares, and the largest, of course, are SAP, Oracle, and Microsoft. These are the largest players out in the market. Okay. And when we look at the tools for data analytics and data science, we again find that we have SQL Server and even Power BI. If you look at the backend structure in Power BI, you will notice an ER diagram. So ER diagrams and SQL are so important for anybody who's coming into data analytics and data science. In fact, it is so important that you will realize that SQL has been integrated into nearly all of these softwares in Python, in R, in SAS. You can call for SQL, say that I'm going to run the package on SQL and then run it, write SQL codes. So that's how far reaching is the effect of SQL. Okay. Again, this is just a representation of the different ERP systems, just for you to know which are the companies, which are the common ERP systems out there. Okay. Now, what are the importance of keys in a relational database? What did we talk? We talked about the fact that data would be consistent. To maintain this consistency, what you need is you should be able to figure out the data for any item and object at any point of time, and you need keys which link different tables together. Okay. What are these? These are often IDs which are created to enable us. Like when we finish a UPI transaction, we get that transaction ID, right? Successfully done. That is what it is, a key to tell us this transaction is done. Okay. Why are the keys required? Therefore, it is required for organization and accuracy, unique identification of records, relationship establishment. So you know how the product, which is manufactured in the factory is linked to the product which is sold in the shop. And data retrieval and update, because without keys, retrieving or updating records will be a challenge. Okay. Types of keys that you find, you have primary key, foreign keys, which are the most common ones. Candidate key, super key, composite key, and unique keys. These are, keys which are used less often. So we will focus on primary keys and foreign keys. Primary key is the unique key in that table. Foreign key is the primary key from some other table which has been created here, so that easy access to data can happen. So primary key can be student and course ID, student ID and course ID. And in the student table, you can have a foreign key called course ID, so that we know which course is being taken by which student. Right? So here is where we will start looking at the different codes, how do we go about it? And then we are going to look at the type of joins and the like, all of which you must have heard about. But let us just wait for the next video, because we will learn all of this using code. So stay tuned. And if you've enjoyed this video, please do subscribe to the channel.